You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
JT Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Ford,
Corey Dr. O,
Brandon Sanderson,
Robin Mock,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Charlene Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is...
Well, thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Thank you for joining us for this countdown week of shows leading up to episode 1000. We're just a couple of shows away. And one of my very good friends, Steve Beaulieu, and I have been talking for a while about doing a show, and I knew I wanted to get him on right here close to 1000, and he has graciously accepted and joined us today for episode 997. Welcome back to the show, Steve.
This is me graciously accepting your invitation to be a part of this show. So as I can graciously do it, I shall graciously provide as much information about my gracious career as possible.
That was the smarmiest acceptance I think I've ever heard.
I'd like to thank my mom for voting me in as president of these United States of America.
Just had to go there, didn't you?
I did, right? Let's go right off the bat. Right? Like it's November 9th, and we're on the cusp of history here. I feel like if those two could do it, I could do it, right?
Well, we're on the cusp of history. We just don't know which alternate reality we're going to ultimately be dealt, but here we are.
Orwell? Will it be Georgie Orwell? Or will it be something more along the lines of Game of Thrones and George R. R. Martin, where everyone just dies unexpectedly?
It's a good year for the Georges, apparently.
It really is. It is.
Yeah. That's if anybody's going to come out smelling like a rose on this, it's going to be people named George.
But really, yeah, thank you for having me, man. I'm always excited to be on the show, and I love listening and I love talking. So
Absolutely. Well, you've been on the show before, obviously, numerous times, and you are one of the hardest working men in publishing on both sides of the spectrum there, with you publishing your own books and stories and publishing other people's books with your team up with Rep Bruno with Aethon Books, putting out some of the very best science fiction and fantasy being published today. First off, how are things going with Aethon? What's happening these days?
I mean, if I can just speak, 2020 has been, one of the best years of my life. And I know that that's a hard thing for a lot of people to hear. So I definitely don't mean to, belittle what this world has been going through in 2020. But, when you consider that everybody's been stuck in their homes since March or whatever varying degree of lockdown your particular state or city is in, like, people are still reading books, right? And with the model that Aethon Books has, where we're not trying to sell you $14.99 Kindles, people can afford to purchase a $1, $4, $6 book, whatever it might be. And so we've kept going strong, probably stronger than we anticipated. And so Aethon's been fantastic this year.
Well, that's one thing that I definitely wanted to ask you was, as a publisher, what has publishing looked like this year? Because I know several people in traditional publishing, and I know that they had it was a little weird for them for a while with most bookstores being closed, and Amazon became the 900-pound gorilla. I guess they always have been, but it seemed like in 2020 that became more so because you could always order from Amazon, whether you could go to your local bookstore or not. What does it look like for an indie-focused publisher? I'm not sure exactly what you guys classify yourselves as, whether it be small press or indie publisher or what. Maybe you can clear that up for me. But what does it look like for you? And was this something that you guys had to think about and make sure that you are positioned in a good place for this? Or has your model just naturally kind of won out because it was a great model to begin with?
To answer the question of how we label ourselves, I have no idea, honestly. I mean, we sell books and we take care of authors and readers. I mean, that's the goal. That's always been the goal. We are not traditional in the sense that we don't focus on bookstores and print copies and print runs and things of that nature. We're not strictly independent since we have partnerships with various traditional, and I love our traditional publishing brothers and sisters, so to speak. I'm not one of those guys that's indie all the way, go indie, and I hate trad. I think that there's a really great position for all of us to work together.
Of course there is. And we've said that from day one on this show, that we are platform agnostic, if you will, because there's good stuff going on all over the place. The indie revolution has just given authors more power, but sometimes the traditional route is absolutely the best way to go. But what you guys are doing, what a lot of people are doing, this hybrid method, I think is where the winning is.
Well, I had the benefit of coming from the music industry during the time when music was transferring from physical copies of CDs to iTunes and digital publishing, whether that be Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, whatever. And I got to watch firsthand as the record labels really just sort of refused to acknowledge that digital was the direction that the world was going.
Right.
And, one of the big reasons why I didn't sign contracts with one of those guys was because the contracts did not accept digital sales as sales toward our advances. So it was 2008 and almost all of sales were iTunes sales. So we would have been stuck in limbo trying to pay off in advance from physical CDs for decades. And so I got to learn from that experience a decade later, going into book publishing and trying to understand the way that things are shifting. And 2020 was tough because you got little physical paper coming from China, which was the epicenter, of course, of the coronavirus. And I don't know, am I allowed to say that? I don't know. But I mean, I'm not calling it the China virus, but at the same time, like, that was the epicenter of this whole thing. And so
sure, it was.
Trad Pub had trouble getting paper, and bookstores were shutting down left and right. And we were not reliant upon anything physical to continue selling books. And so I think that our model lent itself to success in that regard as well, because we also weren't expecting, there's a little known secret, I think, maybe it's a widely known secret, I don't know. But I mean, the reason Trad Pub Kindle prices are $14.99 is to force sales to their hardcovers and their paperbacks, right? It's not people trying to sell Kindle copies. It's people trying to still sell print. And so when you're not worried about selling print, you can afford to sell a Kindle book for far less expensive, and readers can afford to actually do that. It's like, colleges right now charging full price for tuition when nobody's going to campus. Like, that makes no sense. You're not getting anything physical when you buy a Kindle version of something, so it doesn't need to be the same price as a physical book. So we've continued selling books, I guess is the best way to word
it. Do you feel like, because that was a great kind of topic that you went into there, the price of ebooks, and do you feel like that the accessibility and the price accessibility, say that 5 times real fast, have made people read more? The reason I asked that, I've always been a reader. I've always had something that I was reading around the house or whatever. But my book buying, I remember waiting for, not the trade paperback. What's the small paperbacks?
Mass market paperbacks.
Yeah, mass market. Thank you. I couldn't think of mass market for whatever. I remember waiting for books to come out in mass market paperback, where I could pick one up for $6, $7, $8, depending on who it was and how thick it was. and kind of planning my book buying for the year around things like that. And now that with the advent of the Kindle and very cheap and accessible books, and the advent of things like Kindle Unlimited, I never lack for anything to read. And you know, I do a lot of reading for the show. We get books in from publishers and things like that, but I still try to keep my personal private reading segmented from that. And everything's accessible and right at my fingertips. And I know that my reading habits have changed because of that. Do you feel like that industry wide reading is up because of things like that?
I think 100%. I've got bookshelves filled with R.A. Salvatore books that have $6.99 printed on the back of them, right? They're mass markets. Growing up, so to speak, as a reader, my teen years or whatever, going to Walden Books, which still existed then, right? I knew, just like you said, I knew I could go in and grab a fantasy novel for $6.99. It's $7, right? That's the cost of a lunch at a fast food restaurant. We're not talking about putting you in the gutter because you decided to go buy a book. And that book, for me, during those times lasted, I could read a book for a week or 2 weeks, right? Like nowadays, we're talking about people who read a book a day.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that we consider as a publisher very heavily, right? We are publishing books for readers who read one book a day. That's a huge majority of the science fiction readership. Now you try to get them to buy a $14.99 book a day.
Oh yeah.
Many of them are retired. Many of them are veterans. Many of them are, fill in the blank, whatever it might be. 2020, many of them are out of work. And we're trying to, figure out how to supply them with, it's the Netflix mentality of binging stuff. And so you asked if the advent of these things has created a more of a hunger for readers. And I think absolutely. Kindle Unlimited, as much as it, quote, hurt the publishing industry 10 years ago, has done nothing but provide authors who, for a lack of a better way of saying this, would not be accepted into traditional publishing. It's given them an opportunity to publish their stories, which are very good stories. I could think of 100 authors right now who have written very, very good books, very successful series, who would never have been accepted by traditional publishing, if for no other reason but there's a limited number of slots for traditional publishers to release books every year.
Well, we both have friends and acquaintances that we've made over the last few years who are absolutely killing it in publishing right now. And they all have, or most of them that I know of, have stories of, that they've been writing for years, couldn't break in, no one would give them a shot. And if one of these publishers would have given them a shot and they would have been as productive for them as they are now, it would have been nothing but a win for the publisher. So it's kind of weird, that things have happened the way they have. But that's absolutely a story that we could replicate over and over and over with people we know.
Big Pub has built a model on something that I think doesn't benefit publishing anymore, especially in 2020, which is physical appearances and signings. And again, everything revolving around the bookstore and the physical copy of the book. When you have hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, whatever the number is, I don't know what I just said. I said hundreds of thousands and then tens of thousands, but thousands and thousands and thousands of readers who don't care about physical books. Especially in science fiction, we're reading about characters who live 5,000 years in the future. Readers who read about stuff like that are cool with holding a piece of electronics in their hand that carry 50,000 books with them, right? Like,
oh yeah.
Now, fantasy is a little bit different. We're reading about people 5,000 years ago with giant tomes, right? The fantasy reader is still a physical book reader, which is why I think indie publishing has so much trouble in that genre. But all of that just kind of put back together to say that I think the trad pub model has its place. It's a little broken. Indie publishing has its place. It's a little broken. The hybrid model that we're trying to not create, I don't want to say create, but lean into, has tried to take the benefits of trad, the benefits of indie, and put it together to create something that's highly beneficial for the author, highly beneficial for the reader, and thank God, highly beneficial for the publisher.
I'm glad you brought up fantasy, because that was something I definitely wanted to ask you about. You and Rhett Bruno published one of the best fantasy series that I've seen in quite a while, the Buried Goddess Saga. And you guys wrapped that up this year. Was that this year? 2020 has been 18 years long. I'm losing some things.
Book 6, Word of Truth, came out. I have no idea when that came out. I'm in the same boat as you. What day is it?
Right. But the that ended the Buried Goddess Saga. That was a fully told story, right?
Right.
So, what has been your experience with fantasy? I know you alluded to the difference in the reading habits with fantasy. First off, why do you think the difference in science fiction and fantasy in the way readers approach it? Because those two genres really are close cousins in a lot of ways. Why do you think the readership is a little different there?
So quickly, April 21st, 2020 was when the 6th book came out.
I was thinking spring, but I couldn't.
Yeah, I mean, your guess would have been literally better than mine, because I couldn't. Oh, no, I was wrong still. That was when the audiobook came out. The ebook came out February 25th.
Okay.
Okay, so that's another issue, right? Is the audio came out different times, so there's a little bit of confusion there.
In Mississippi, we call February spring.
That's fair. I mean,
that's fair.
Texas, so that sounds about right.
I was judging on whether I was wearing shorts or not, and I was. So.
Is it sandals or sneakers? I don't know.
That's literally the 11 and a half months out of the year what the dress code is here. Anyway, that's there.
We released 6 complete books. As a matter of fact, just about a week ago, we released all 6 books as one downloadable Kindle file for $3 on Amazon, right? So there's another idea of what makes the difference between trad pub and indie pub. Yes, we're giving you 6 books for $3. There's a million words in that Kindle.
Please package that in a hardcover 1 volume.
I couldn't even fit the first 3 into it. So I have my hardcovers right behind me. I've got the first 3 books as a hardcover, the second 3 books as a hardcover. The second 3 books, 4 through 6, I had to make the font almost illegible just to fit it within the 1,200 pages or whatever that I had to work with. And for me, it was just a collector kind of thing, or something to have on my shelf. So I didn't care if anyone could ever read it.
Well, yeah, you got to do it.
Right. But there's no way I could fit all 6 books in one. I wish that I could, but that would be, I mean, I don't even know. It would be massive. It would be so big you wouldn't be able to hold it. So all that to say that, yeah, $3, you can get all 6 books. And what happens in a reader's mind is they go, well, it must not be very good if they're able to do that. But when you consider the trad pub market, as an author, I'm making the same amount of money selling those as I might make selling it through a traditional publisher with, without that middleman in the middle, or however you want to say that. I'm still making money on this, and I'm offering something that people can actually jump into. And in reality, it's for the Kindle Unlimited readers more than it is for the buyers.
Sure.
Right. I'm giving an opportunity for the Kindle Unlimited reader to just get 1 file and read the whole series all the way through. What differs from science fiction and fantasy differ in a lot of ways. You mentioned that they're close cousins. I do believe that's true. I also believe that one of the main reasons that is even a thing is because booksellers back in the 80s and 90s didn't have enough fantasy or enough sci-fi to make their own shelves, so they just shoved them together.
You're probably right about that.
Right. So because I was an avid fantasy reader growing up. I couldn't stand science fiction. Hated everything about it. And it wasn't until Battlestar Galactica, the 2004 or 2003 series came out that I fell in love with science fiction.
Really?
Yeah, that was what did it for me. And I don't know what it was, but I'll be honest, there's still that vein of like hard sci-fi that I can't even begin to stomach. But on the same token, there's like that really heavy epic fantasy that's just like Tolkien. I love Tolkien, but like I can't read something that's like Tolkien. Right? You know what I'm saying? Like we did that that podcast together a few years ago, Wheel of Time, and we gave up. And that's the kind of fantasy that I just can't handle.
Right. That's so pretentious. And
is it well written? Sure. Is it a great story? Sure. But oh my God, you could say this in half the words.
Right.
But people like that. There is a phenomenally large group of readers who love that kind of storytelling. It's just not me. And that's okay. And I know I'm talking a lot because I think you asked some questions that I just am really passionate about. The difference between sci-fi and fantasy is exactly that. It's like you got readers who read a book a day, and then you have readers that will wait 7 years for the new book in their series to come out, and then they'll go buy it and they'll read it 6 times in a row. That's the epic fantasy readers.
Right.
I'm reading through Harry Potter right now for the 180th time. I know that's an exaggeration, but like the only book I've read more is the Bible. It's like, you know? So anyway, I think that sums up my response to what's the difference.
The Novel Factory Online is software for the serious writer. With features like notes that are automatically organized, that means no more drowning in piles of paper, notes, or spending hours organizing digital folder structures. The Novel Factory offers clear, obvious structures for noting down information about plot, characters, locations, and everything else relating to your novel. Innovative features like the roadmap take you from concept to finished novel. The roadmap is an optional step-by-step guide to writing a novel that takes you from the premise to final manuscript and beyond. It draws on tried and true, tested theory that lies behind the majority of best-selling novels and blockbuster movies. Access your writing anywhere. The web version of the Novel Factory can be accessed anywhere you have internet. So you can write your novel on the train to work, while walking the dog, or climbing a mountain. Just log in and all your drafts and notes will be at your fingertips. Go to novel-writer.com to see how this powerful software can unleash your creative side. Use code HANK2020 for 20% off. That's the Novel Factory. Authors, I have a fantastic new service to tell you about. It's called PubSite. PubSite is a service to help you build your very own website, your home on the web, where you can promote your work and give your fans a place to connect with you. PubSite is a website platform that allows every author, regardless of budget, to have a great-looking professional website, developed by the book marketing professionals at FSB Associates. PubSite is the new, easy-to-use DIY website builder developed specifically for books and authors. Whether you're an author of 1 book or 20, or a small publisher, PubSite allows you to build, design, and most importantly, update your website pain-free. No need to be dependent on a designer or webmaster to make a small but costly change to your website. Save the money and do it yourself. PubSite is the best platform for authors because it's a book-centric platform. PubSite was built just for authors and small publishers. Every design, feature, and layout is book-centric. They have customized designs for you to use. It's easy to build. No coding or HTML is necessary to create a stunning, professional-looking website with all the features you want. Get a custom domain name, yourname.com. It's simple to update. You can add all of your books, add a blog and a book tour, sell from any retailer, manage your email list and social media, and even do e-commerce. Build your website with a 14-day free trial, then pay just $19.99 per month, which includes hosting, and we offer packages starting at $499 to set up the website for you. Pub-site.com, the place to help authors find their home on the web.
So, let's go back for just a second and talk about music and publishing, because you mentioned that, in 2008, I think it was, you said you guys had the opportunity to sign with a major publisher distributor and opted not to do that. I had Michael Sweet of Striper on the show a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things I really wanted to ask him is that music and publishing are following a similar path, and music is a few years ahead of publishing in a lot of ways. And a lot of the things that we're seeing with that happened in music with streaming and things like that a few years ago are now filtering over into the publishing world. How do you see these two art forms as being parallel in a sense? And what do you think we as writers and publishers can learn from the things we've seen our brothers and sisters over in music publishing go through in previous years? Or maybe what they're going with now.
Right. I'll start by saying that I'm no authority on the matter, right? Like Michael Sweet had it's Striper, you know what I'm saying? Like he's got a leg up here for answering questions like that than I do. But what we're seeing in publishing right now is that like companies like Audible are going to that subscription-based $14.99 unlimited listening. Here's 11,000 books completely quote free included in your membership. And I do believe that that's the direction and it's all going to go. We saw it with Kindle Unlimited, and Amazon is a customer-focused entity. They are not a seller-focused entity. They want what's best for their customers, and what's best for their customers is the most inexpensive way to consume a product, right? That's why Kindle Unlimited is like $9.99 and there's like 1 million books in it, or whatever it is. And then from a publisher point of view, from an author point of view, it sucks. As what's the word I'm looking for? As a music publisher years ago, as a music creator is probably the word I'm looking for. I logged into my band's Spotify backend yesterday. I'm like, that sucks. That just sucks. But at the same time, when you recognize something is making a shift and it's inevitable and you are unable to change the outcome because you're angry about it, right? I think 2020, in so many ways, I'm trying not to get too political, right? But like anger doesn't make change. It just makes other people angry.
Right.
And so when I'm upset that Amazon and Audible has made decisions that are counterproductive for an author or a publisher, I can make one of two choices. I can lean into what they're doing because I believe that they're the ones that are pushing the industry, and everyone's going to follow them. Or I can rebel against it and I can try something like what we call going wide in the industry, which is where we allow our books to go to Kobo and Barnes and Noble and all of these other e-reader companies. When we've seen the evidence show that Amazon exclusive has a far greater financial value for the author and for the publisher than trying to go wide. Some people have different experiences with that. We've not. So we're not about to rebel against the company that we see as leading the industry. So we're trying to find all the opportunities that we can to make it fit within our model, so to speak. TradPub, that's where they fight. They go, no, we're going to do this our way. And hybrid publishers go, okay, I don't really like what's going on, but let's make it work.
Yeah. So you guys published the Buried Goddess Saga this year, which we talked about, which is kind of the, I take it as the epic fantasy tale that you always wanted to tell. And you and Rhett also published Luna Missile Crisis, and I know there's a story behind that book that I want you to tell us about in just a second. but I just noticed that you have up for pre-order the second book in the Luna Missile Crisis series, or the Contact Day series, I think it's called. Was this always meant to be a series? This kind of took me by surprise a little bit. I wasn't expecting a book two.
That's a kind of difficult question to answer because neither were we. And if I can, I'll try to keep all of my judgments kind of out of this answer. But our original manuscript was a single book intended to tell a full story that left no open endings, that a reader would read and be completely happy with. And I do believe that 90% of our readers would be completely happy without a book two. But we made some decisions in publishing the book where other entities said, we'd like you to do this, this, or this, and leave it open as for a sequel. And we did that. We don't know that it was the best decision in the world. But like I said, when you're a hybrid kind of, we're going to lean into it, and there's more story to tell. And we think that book two is going to be a very good story, but it will be a duology. I don't care what anyone else says. It's going to be two books. I don't care how much people want another book. It's going to be two books that tell a complete story, because our intention was always to be intentional, right, with this storytelling. And so we're going to clean up all the things that were left for a sequel in book two. And I'm actually very excited, outside of the fact that it was the hardest book I've ever written in my life. And that's why we have slated it for like May of next year, because we wanted to make sure that we had absolutely every opportunity to make sure that it lives up to the standard that we set with the first.
Why was it the hardest book that you've ever written?
Oh my gosh, it was so hard, man. So we've got so many elements in that story. We've got alternate history that includes real characters like Richard Nixon, JFK, Neil Armstrong. And then we've got the science fiction elements of what happens to our real world when aliens interrupt the 1961 launch of Yuri Gagarin's spacecraft. And so now we're taking 1960, which neither of us was alive in, and we are writing a story that has to feel true to the 1960s, but also somebody who grew up in the 1960s would go, that's feasible if aliens showed up. Oh. And it's right. So it's sci-fi, it's alt history, it's real world. It's characters that are, brother and family dynamics. There are so many interweaving storylines and threads going through that whole thing that it just about drove. I mean, Rhett and I rewrote that book 3 times, which we don't rewrite books. We wrote the entire Buried Goddess Saga. And yes, we did edits and stuff on it, but there was no rewriting. We wrote 1 million words in a 6-book series without a rewrite. And then we rewrote Luna Missile Crisis 3 times.
So having an experience like that will make you respond in one of 2 ways generally. 1, I'm never doing that ever again. Or 2, I love the challenge. I love stretching myself, and I want to do this kind of challenge again. Where do you find yourself?
As an indie author, the second of those is a career killer, right? Because it doesn't matter how good your book is in indie publishing. If you're not producing a book every month or a book every 2 months, you're not going to succeed in publishing as an indie author. Rhett and I have the benefit of owning Aethon books. So like, we don't have to worry about these weird schedules with our writing. We just write what we want to write, and we release it when we want to release it, and hope it does well. But if it doesn't, change the world, at least we put out a fantastic story, and then we're going to go other angles. We're going to try to go other angles. Like, we've written a television script for it, and we have some interest in that area. And so that could be a potential future for it. But who knows? I mean, a lot of people get options for TV stuff, right?
Sure.
So we're not putting our eggs in that basket, but for us, it took us to 2 places. Originally we went, I never want to do that again. because I think I had hair before we started writing that book. But then on the other side of things, both of us went, this is the best story we've ever told. Now, I could argue that the 6 books in the Buried Goddess Saga is the best story we ever told, but that's 6 books long, and it took us 6 books to do it, right? But Luna Missile Crisis, I think we told a phenomenal story, if I can say that without sounding arrogant. I thought we told a phenomenal story in 145,000 words, and we really wanted that to be it. We wanted that to be the story. And I don't, man, if fans of the series are listening, I don't want you to think like we don't want to give you more. That's not at all what I mean. It's just that we had a vision for one book. Since then, Rhett and I have developed book 2, and we love the idea. We think it's going to make people very, very happy. But that wasn't the original goal and intent. So we had to backpedal a little and go, okay, now what do we do with this?
Now that brings up an interesting discussion point, because we both know authors that have long running series, and some of them are phenomenal all the way through. Some of them you can tell about halfway through the series, okay, the author obviously is just done with this and is just phoning stuff in, but it's a pretty good seller, so they're going to keep churning more of the same. And there probably is a fan base that wants more of that and are perfectly content with the level of product that's coming out. Now, you've got Luna Missile Crisis and Many Worlds Fair, which is slated to be the follow-up to that. And you say, this is 2 books, and this is my vision for it, and this is where it sits. How do you balance the an author's vision for something and the opposing view of wanting to stretch things out and give readers more of what they want?
Rhett and I just have a different vision in regards to our own writing. As publishers, if our authors have a series that's doing really well, we're going to say, you should write more that series, right? I mean, come on, we're publishers. As
I was wondering if that would be your answer.
Yeah, of course. As authors, and I'll be honest, if the author that we said that to came back and said, no, this is the vision I had and it's over, we would just go, okay, that sucks. I mean, that's money on the table, whatever. But that's your vision. We want to make sure that we honor that, and that's perfectly okay with us. So like we're not the kind of publisher that's going to say, you got to do this, you got to do that. But on our side of things, I don't know. It would take a tremendous number of people petitioning for a book 3 for the Contact Day series for us to even consider it, because our intention is to end it. A lot of times in indie publishing, there's no clear ending to a story. The original ending to Luna Missile Crisis was an ending. There was no plan to move forward. And when we rewrote it for the 3rd time under the direction of a developmental editor who had some thoughts, we went, okay, let's leave this a little bit open-ended. And we'll go from there. So all I could really say is that I do believe that I'm going to be happy with the Many Worlds Fair. I believe that our readers are going to be happy with the Many Worlds Fair. It just wasn't the original plan. There's nothing wrong with that, I hope.
Sure. One of the other stars of publishing that has happened over the last few years is the popularization of audiobooks. And audiobooks are something that I have loved for a long time, as someone who is going to be 49 years old next week, and with 5 kids. To read as much as I want to read, I always have to have a book going on in my headphones, and I've done that for years. And I was really surprised that audiobooks have really taken off the way they have the last couple of years. And it seems like 2020 is, they're fire hot and only getting hotter. I think everyone agrees that audiobooks are the biggest growth market in publishing right now. How do you guys feel about audio, and what do you think I don't want to say advent, because audiobooks are not new, but the popularization of them is kind of new. This is a new thing people are, for whatever reason, latching on to. As a publisher and as an author, how do you feel about audio, and what do you think it's bringing to the table?
Another one that I have to answer separately, right? As a publisher and an author. As an author and a reader, I love them. I listen to about 150 books a year. When I write, I typically know who I have in mind as the narrator, and I write the story as if they were the ones reading it. So far in my career, I have been blessed to actually get the narrators that I wrote with intention for them to read. The Buried Goddess Saga, from day one, I wrote it as if Luke Daniels was reading it, and we got Luke Daniels to do it. The Luna Missile Crisis, the intention was Ray Porter. We got Ray Porter. The superhero short story that we had was intended for R.C. Bray, and R.C. Bray did it. And so, I could keep going on and on. I don't need to, but like that's been the goal as a writer. As a publisher, what we're seeing is that audio is becoming more and more difficult as the industry grows, because the current model for audio is, that credit model for Audible, where you get 1 credit a month and that offers you 1 book a month as a listener. And so you are having hundreds of releases from publishers and authors a month, all vying for 1 credit per listener. Now, granted, plenty of listeners buy more credits or they purchase outright, but you're talking about a $30 book.
Right.
Right. And so the number of those people who are spending $30 on a book they may or may not like, that's tough. We've seen the issue of Audible really pushing that if you don't like a book, you can return the book. And a lot of people actually just listen to a book, love the book, and return it, get another credit, get another book that they love. And they do that as often as they can. So authors and publishers take a huge hit when somebody returns a book, but there's no clear consequence for a listener that returns a book. There is no consequence, is really what I should say. So it's more and more difficult by the month to make any money. I mean, narrators expect more and more and more money for the product as things become more popular, but the income is less and less and less. So it's hard to afford to do it as a publisher and as an author. And so at some point, especially with the introduction of Audible Premium Plus, where for $15, which is what a membership to Audible has always been, for $15, 11,000 books. Where's the incentive for a listener to even spend their credits anymore? They have access to all these free ones.
Right.
So as publishers, we're going, okay, how do we take advantage of this? How do we get involved? And I say take advantage, I don't mean that in a negative sense, but how do we allow ourselves to benefit from this while still giving listeners and readers what they want? And so that's where we're at as publishers, trying our best to be involved and excited about the process and the projects. And as a listener, I love Audible Premium Plus, so I can't complain from a listener's point of view. And we have Baron Steel, which is a short story that R.C. Bray read that's in the Audible Premium Plus. And I mean, it came out October 22nd and has 500 ratings already. I mean, that's fantastic. And they're all very good ratings. And so from a career point of view, as an author, having something in Premium Plus that does well is awesome. It's fantastic.
So are you getting any sense of what this is going to mean long term? I remember when Kindle Unlimited first came out, and there was a lot of hype around it, where authors were like, "Yes, we're going to get filthy rich from this," and they started Kindle Unlimited started changing some of their algorithms and things, and things kind of settled out. Are you getting any sense of the kind of publishing growing pains of the Audible kind of all you can eat buffet model? And do you feel like that they've learned a lot of things from Kindle Unlimited, because Audible is an Amazon company? Do you think that they've allowed this other arm to inform what's going on there, and things will be a little smoother?
I don't think anyone learns from anything ever. 2020 is a great example of that. So I don't really know how to respond to that unless I actually worked for Amazon or Audible. But what I can say is that I don't believe that what we're seeing right now is an accurate representation of what things are going to look like in the end. Um, Kindle Unlimited, same thing when it started. You alluded to it. It was one thing. It's evolved or digressed or whatever words you want to use. It has become what it is now. A lot of authors did get very rich off of it. We make our living, so to speak, as authors and publishers off of Kindle Unlimited. Is it the best thing that it could be for us? Probably not. Is it the best thing for readers? Probably. And if as authors and publishers, our desire fits Audible, Amazon's desires pretty closely. Our goal is to give the readers the best product that we can do it for an affordable price and blah, 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 blah. For Amazon, that's easier to do when you've got billions of people pouring into something, right? That's a lot of money. That's a lot of stuff. So like all that said, Amazon Premium Plus looks like what it looks like right now. I think that in 2 years from now, it's going to look drastically different. I think they're going to begin to focus on episodic storytelling instead of novels. I think that it's going to become more of a Spotify with original content instead of focusing so much on getting every single book that ever releases on audio. What that might mean is that authors who are previously published by companies like Audible Studios, maybe such as myself, Audible may not be as interested in teaming up and producing audio for that because they're going to have people producing their own stuff that is exclusive to Audible Premium Plus. And that's sort of, I think that's sort of, I should say this, I have no inside information as to what I believe here. This is just as a listener and somebody that's kind of watching what's going on as a publisher, I think that that's probably the direction things are going.
Well, I know that Aethon is a company that you focus. I don't want to say primarily, but heavily on ebook readers and providing them with a good reading experience and lots of material for your Kindle readers. And I know that you guys are also heavily into audiobook production, and that's an arm of Aethon that you're passionate about. Mm-hmm. But you guys also do these collectible type things. I'll see that you have hardcover editions, not just paperbacks, that through Amazon Publishing, but hardcovers and actual like collectibles. And when you're talking about the Spotify model of what Audible is going to, I've noticed that they have a number of biography or memoir type things that they've published recently. A lot of times by musicians and artists of different stripes, where it's maybe a 3 or 4 hour long production, but it's narrated by the artist. I noticed one yesterday. This is what's sticking out in my mind, that by Rufus Wainwright, who's a singer-songwriter that I'm not very familiar with. I'm kind of familiar, but I listened to the sample on the site, and it's like a 3 or 4 hour, and he has a very distinctive voice, and it's obviously done by the artist, and that's kind of a niche thing. What do you see going forward? These little niche things that publishers can do to give the diehard collectors and things like that purchase into their experience. Musicians now, even though everyone's streaming and no one's really buying CDs anymore, the thing that's become popular over the last 5 or 10 years is pressing vinyl again. And now you can buy a vinyl record, but it costs $40 or
right.
Some craziness like that. And but there's still ways for people to hold something in their hand and feel like they're part of something. And even as ebooks and audiobooks go on and on, what kind of opportunities are there going to be for people to plug in and collect things like people want to do?
Well, if you look at, to try to answer all the questions, if you look at Audible's bestsellers, you've got like Barack Obama, you've got, there's a Marine, God, I can't remember the dude's name, but he's been on the bestseller list for like 2 years, right? And if you look at that, you'd see that most of the bestsellers do tend to be Matthew McConaughey's new book has been #1, and he narrated it. So that actor, politician, musician model of like the writer of the book reading the book, and they are somebody who is popular, like that's a thing. So I think those are the #1 sellers on Audible right now, not the fantasy sci-fi stuff that we do, although they do fine as well. But what we've tended to do and what we've seen happening is there's a lot of specialty presses that are pressing specialty style hardcovers and things. Like Brandon Sanderson, of course, just did a $1.8 billion gazillion trillion dollar Kickstarter, right? I mean, he made so much money. The publisher made so much money off of that by just taking his book that's already been written and putting a leather cover on it.
Right.
Right. So what we have done, of course, we had an audiobook with Untitled Vijayaratna. He wrote it, and Nathan Fillion of Firefly fame is the narrator. The novelty, so to speak, of audiobooks is finding somebody like that to do the audio. Not to say that people would not have bought Yudin Jaya's book. I don't mean to say that at all, but guess what? A tremendous number more purchased his book because Nathan Fillion's name is on it than they would have if it was just Yuda's name.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So finding those kind of partnerships has been instrumental in where we are as a publisher in 2020. We published Lou Diamond Phillips' book.
Never heard of him.
Yeah, right. Lou Diamond was on the show, I believe, like 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And
super good guy.
Lou is the star of The Prodigal Son on Fox right now. Lou is in La Bamba and Young Guns and
Longmire,
a million things. He's a tremendous author. A tremendous actor who is now a tremendous author. We published his book. You asked the question, what do we do for the collectors? Well, he's got a sort of a collector's edition hardcover that has like 30 or more illustrations in it that his wife Yvonne did. And so Yvonne did this, really like super cool black and white art that went along with the story. And she did such a beautiful job with it. So you can listen to it on audio, narrated by R.C. Bray and Julia Wellen, and buy the ebook that has like 5 illustrations in it. Or you could also add that kind of limited edition hardcover that's got 38 illustrations in it, or however many there is. So those are the kinds of things that we're trying to do to make all of the formats make sense for the reader to jump on board with.
So, Steve, I know that you said that 2020 has been a pretty good year for you. There's been lots of opportunities that have come about, and you personally and your partnership with Rhett have been in a good place to take advantage of those things. And are you looking toward 2021 and, the politics in America aside, what do you think 2021 holds?
For me, it's hard to, I am a visionary by nature, but this year has been so unique in that it's hard to look to the future. And that is politics aside. I don't mean it that way. It's just, there's so much going on in our world right now that oftentimes my focus is on like what's happening next week. 2021, I do know, we've struck a partnership with Heavy Metal Magazine. We've been in really close contact with their CEO, Matthew Medney. Matt has a book coming out tomorrow called Beyond Kuiper, the Galactic Star Alliance. He's releasing that on hardcover. It's this really freaking cool graphic novel. It's a novel, but it's fully illustrated. It's going to be on audio with forgive me, I can't remember the main narrator's name, but Dylan Sprouse is also in it. Dylan Sprouse was the little kid on Big Daddy, and he played in Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. He's one of the twins, the Sprouse twins. And then Matt came to us and said, would you publish the ebook? And so we went, sure, let's publish the ebook, but what else can we do together? So now we're talking all kinds of things with Heavy Metal Magazine. And for those of you who haven't been under a rock for 40 years, like Heavy Metal is gigantic. And these guys are amazing guys that we've really become friends with. And so 2021 looks like all of this partnership with Heavy Metal Magazine, finding ways of doing new things with our IPs, intellectual properties, in things like comics and graphic novels and television and movies and all of these things that, of course, all of us want to do, but we're going to do everything that we can to actually make those things happen. So 2018 for us, 2019 was the establishment of Aethon Books. 2019, 2020, we focused on Aethon Audio. End of 2021, we are focused on every other form of media that we can get our hands on for the sake of telling the best stories that we can tell.
Well, you guys are telling some of the best stories that are out right now, and I look forward to seeing what ways you come up with of innovating the distribution and innovating in storytelling. That's it's exciting about the Heavy Metal partnership and seeing what not only taking advantage of each other's distribution and things like that, but looking at ways to collaborate to come up with new things to do. I'm excited for that. Steve, if people are just learning about you and everything that you do, where can they find you online?
We could find Aethon Books at Aethon Books, Aethon Books.com. As an author, I write as Jamie Castle, Jaime Castle, Castle.com. Of course, you can find me on Facebook, and I will be on. I'm not moving to Parler. I'm sorry, Parler. I'll be on Facebook, so hang out with me. I think that's it. That's the best places you could find me.
Excellent. We'll put links in the show notes to make it easy for folks to find you. The Buried Goddess Saga complete series, all 6 books packaged into one easy-to-read Kindle edition is there's a link to it in the show notes. Go download it now for your Kindle. Also, some of the very best audiobooks from our friend Luke Daniels, also narrated. We'll put links to there where people can find that over at Audible. Luna Missile Crisis is out now. Lots of stuff going on. Steve, thank you so much for taking time to come back on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Do you want to get paid to write stories? Do you enjoy collaborating with other talented storytellers? Do you want to work completely remotely and set your own hours? Relay Publishing is looking for writers and editors to work on fiction projects across a range of genres, from thrillers to sci-fi, fantasy, and romance. The Relay process is extremely collaborative, in the same vein as a TV show's writer's room. If you're a story geek, then you'll be on a great team. There are 7 ghostwriting positions and 10 editing positions currently available. Please go to www.recruitment.relaypub.com. That's www.recruitment.relaypub.com for more information on how to apply. Join a great storytelling team today. What Death Taught Terrence by Derek McFadden. Life is a journey. So is the afterlife. At the end of his life, Terrence McDonald must discover its meaning, or he'll be banned from the afterlife forever, and his soul will cease to exist. Join Terrence and those who love him on a poignant and unforgettable journey through a life at once wonderful and harrowing. Learn what Terrence learned. See what Terrence sees. By this provocative story's end, readers may even learn a thing or two about themselves. See why people are saying things like, Derek McFadden writes with an insight few can match. If you like the works of Mitch Albom, I think you'll find What Death Taught Terrence a worthy addition to your library, and the reading of it a life-affirming journey. I found the story immediately immersive, and it stuck with me long after I finished. What Death Taught Terrence by Derek McFadden, on sale now. Invasion Day, the first book in the They Came for Blood series by Scott Moon. David Osage is a dangerous man with a complicated past, but these days he's just trying to keep his head down, driving big rigs. One night he saddles himself with a hitchhiker, a nuisance who's more than she seemed, and that's when everything changes. No one was ready for an alien invasion. Death is raining from the sky, and the only questions left is, do you run, fight, or submit? For David Osage and his family, answering is as easy as giving the alien invaders the finger. Grab Book 1, Invasion Day, in the They Came for Blood series, and then follow it up with Book 2, Resistance Day, and Book 3, Victory Day. Available at Amazon.com.